The wind came down the mountain like a cry from the heavens, curling around the pines and scattering white powder through the valley. Inside that storm, a shape moved. A woman hunched forward, clutching a bundle to her chest. Her boots were worn to threads, her coat thin, her eyes hollow from nights without sleep. The bundle she carried was wrapped in a blanket no thicker than a memory, and beneath it lay a child's still face. She whispered to him as if her words could warm his skin. "Just a little farther, Samuel. Just a little more." At the foot of Black Elk Ridge, a cabin stood against the wind, its chimney coughing smoke. Inside lived Elias Boone, a man the townsfolk called the Bear of the Mountain, a trapper, hermit, and roomer. They said he'd turned his back on God and men alike after losing his wife and son to a fever years ago. Now he lived by the law of silence, with only his dog and the cold. That morning, Elias had been skinning a deer when the dog barked once, low and strange, not the bark of warning but of sorrow. He stepped outside, snow crunching under his boots, and saw her. She stood in the drift, half buried, eyes glazed with exhaustion. When she tried to speak, the wind stole her breath. Elias caught her by the shoulders before she fell. She weighed nothing. In her arms, the bundle did not move. He led her inside, set her by the fire, and only then did she find words. "Please, bury my child," she whispered. No introduction, no plea for warmth or food, only that. Elias looked from her face to the blanket. He had buried many things in this mountain, traps, bones, memories, but not a stranger's child. Still, there was something in her tone, something that reached through the iron cage around his heart. He nodded once. "What happened?" Her name was Ruth Marin. Her husband had died in a mine collapse last winter. Since then, she'd taken work cleaning rooms at the trading post. When the fever came through town, her son was the first to catch it. She'd walked 3 days through snow to find a preacher who might bless the body before the ground froze solid, but found none. Now, too weak to go farther, she'd come upon Elias's cabin by chance or by grace. Elias listened without speaking. When she finished, she stared at the flames as if waiting for them to answer. He rose, fetched his coat, and said only, "I'll dig." The ground outside was iron hard. He swung his pick until his shoulders screamed, until sweat froze in his beard. The widow knelt beside the child, smoothing his hair with trembling fingers. Every blow of the pick was a heartbeat, every exhale a prayer he'd long forgotten how to say. When at last the pit was ready, Elias built a small wooden cross from broken fence slats. He hadn't prayed in 10 years. But when Ruth's voice broke into sobs, something cracked open inside him. He found himself murmuring the words his wife once used at their son's grave. "Earth to earth, ashes to ashes." When it was done, she didn't move. Snow gathered on her shoulders like a shroud. Elias placed his coat over her. "Come inside," he said. "I'll make you broth." She looked at him, really looked for the first time, as though she'd just realized a man could still be kind. That night the storm deepened. Inside, she sat by the hearth while he stirred the pot. The cabin smelled of pine and smoke and something long forgotten, company. She asked softly, "Why do you live up here alone?" He gave no answer, but his eyes told her of graves and guilt and the kind of silence that never ends. When she fell asleep in the chair, he covered her with a blanket and looked at the fire until dawn. In the morning, the widow woke to the smell of coffee. Her eyes were swollen, her heart hollow. Elias said nothing, only slid a mug toward her. She whispered, "Thank you." He nodded once, as always. After breakfast, she said she'd leave, that she had nowhere to go but must keep moving. The thought of her walking into that storm unsettled him more than he cared to admit. "Stay till the weather breaks," he said. It was not an offer. It was mercy disguised as command. For days they spoke little. Ruth helped around the cabin, mending clothes, washing tins, feeding the dog. At night, she'd sit by the fire humming lullabies to the emptiness in her arms. Elias pretended not to hear, but every note tightened something in his chest. He began to notice the way the light caught in her hair, the quiet strength in her voice. One evening, she asked, "Did you ever lose someone, Mr. Boone?" He stared into the flames. "My boy," he said finally. Fever took him. Then his mother followed. Ruth's eyes glistened. "I'm sorry." He shrugged, but his hand trembled slightly. The storm raged for a week. On the 8th night, the wind fell silent. Elias stepped outside, breathing in the still air. The moon cast silver over the fresh snow. He felt something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. Behind him, Ruth's voice came softly. "I think Samuel would have liked you." He turned. She was looking up at the stars. "He always said mountain men were heroes." I think he was right. He wanted to answer, but the lump in his throat wouldn't let him. That night, she placed the child's tiny wooden toy on the windowsill. "It'll watch over us," she said. And for the first time, Elias didn't argue. He realized that the grave outside was not just for a child. It was for the part of himself he'd buried long ago. When the thaw came, Ruth packed her few belongings. Elias felt the ache of parting before she even spoke. "I'll head east," she said. "Maybe find work near the fort." "You've done more than any preacher could." He shook his head. "No, I only did what a man should," she smiled faintly. "Then there are too few men left." As she stepped out into the pale morning, he found himself saying, "Ruth, if you ever find reason to come back, the fire will be waiting." She turned, eyes glistening with gratitude too deep for words. Then she was gone down the trail, her figure swallowed by the white expanse. Elias stood there for a long time, then looked toward the small cross under the pine. He whispered, "Rest easy, boy." A gust of wind answered, gentle as a sigh. Inside the cabin, the toy on the windowsill caught the sunlight and glowed. For the first time in 10 years, Elias Boone smiled.